Hi, I'm Jason, and welcome back to Custom Cards, where we teach you to make your own Magic the Gathering cards. Last week, we looked at the top 5 community-designed Magic cards from the custommagic subreddit and voiced our opinions on them. People seem to enjoy it pretty well, so we're going to start doing that every week. Now, I am looking at these for the very first time, so these will all be first impressions. First up, we have a couple meme cards, starting with Chained to the Rocks. Chained to the Rocks, Chained to the Rocks, Chained to the Rocks, Chained to the Rocks, Chained to the is a white enchantment aura for 1 and a white. Enchant Rhino you control. When Chained to the Rocks enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Chained to the Rocks leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets plus X plus Y, where X is the exiled creature's power and Y is its toughness. This is obviously a play on Chained to the Rocks from Theros, and they're both about as narrow, so I think it's pretty good. I don't know just how many Rhino cards there are. I know that there are, of course, the rocks, so there are probably a few dozen, but you kind of have to build your deck around this a little bit. And at that point, it's a pretty good removal spell plus pump spell, but you can still be 2 for 1 if somebody kills your creature, so not the best, not the worst. Cool pun there. For our second upvoted meme card of the week, we have Zombie Army Goes, which costs, you guessed it, black, red, red, red. It is a sorcery. Return all zombies from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. While this is a meme card, I do think that it seems interesting. If it were printed in something like Innistrad, where there are a lot of zombies, I could definitely see this being a powerful card. Obviously, the mana cost is needed for the joke, but I think it's more likely to be black, black, red, with maybe an extra 1 or 2 mana of generic, which would be a lot more playable. That said, zombies aren't really that much in red. I guess they were back in Grixis. So the actual utility of this card, probably pretty narrow, but as far as memes go, I think it's safe to say this meme became a dream for sure. Then we have a couple Planeswalkers for honorable mentions this week. First up is Wise Thorn the Patient. It costs 2 green white and enters with 1 loyalty. With a static ability, creatures you control get +0 plus X, where X is the number of loyalty counters on Wise Thorn the Patient. +1, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. And -5, you get an emblem with each creature you control gets +0 +5 and assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. And this is really interesting. Not overpowered by any means. I mean, it's a 1 loyalty planeswalker for 4, which is, pretty bad, but it's got a decent static where it just makes all of your creatures get +0 +1 and then actually 2 the first turn because you're going to plus it. And it gives you an 0/1, which then becomes an 0/3. Pretty good defense there. You definitely don't want to be playing it on an empty board because 1/0/3 probably won't protect your 2 loyalty planeswalker, but with just 1 or 2 other creatures, this really buffs them up and can stay around, and if you get to emblem it, it's actually really scary. It's essentially +5/+5 to all your creatures, plus any of the ones with higher toughness, like the plants, for example, will just be even bigger. So this is a really cool design. Very well done. For our other honorable mention planeswalker, we have Lysa Grave. Lysa costs XX black green for an X loyalty planeswalker. She has Delve and +1. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. You gain 1 life. -3, destroy target creature, artifact, or enchantment. And -8, put up to 2 target creature cards from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Delve, as we all know, is a broken mechanic, but I like how they actually balanced it with a double X as opposed to what I think would be a rookie but easy to make mistake of just being X black-green, which would absolutely be busted. The Delve on the double X, though, seems pretty fair, especially since you're getting only, say you delve 4 cards, you could play this on turn 2, assuming you somehow have 4 cards in your graveyard, but it's still only a 2 loyalty planeswalker. It goes up by 1, but all you do is gain a life and mill yourself for 2 more, so it's not like your plus is even that insane. If you do manage to play her for at least 4, which is going to be 10 mana and or exiled cards, you do get to destroy a creature, enchantment, or artifact, but I feel like if you've jumped through that many hoops, you kind of deserve it. And then her ultimate, I really like this, is not necessarily game ending. It's still very powerful, but if it was just one of those where you basically win the game or get an emblem that's going to win you the game, well, you just build a deck where you just delve, 18 cards and you just get that immediately and then you win. But if you're delving everything, you don't have that many great cards to get from your own graveyard. And if your opponent doesn't have anything in their graveyard, then they're not going to be much help there either. So I think this is very well designed, and it's a nice balance between how many cards do I want to delve and do I want to keep any cards in my graveyard to ultimate if I can get there. And now we're getting into our top 5. Number 5 is Tieless, the Shifting Tide by RA Mariatho. For 2 blue-green, you get a 4/4 legendary creature Serpent. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one. You may play an additional land this turn, or return target land you control and target non-land permanent and opponent controls to their owner's hands. This is very cool design. So it works great just by itself. Every other turn you're returning one of your lands and bouncing one of their permanents, and then the other turns you can play that additional land so that you're not falling behind on mana. At least every other turn you're not. But that said, you can also just use this to play an additional land every single turn as kind of an Oracle of Moldiah effect if you have a lot of landfall triggers and, just tons and tons of land. Or if you already have tons and tons of land, you can just continuously bounce. And again, if you have those landfall triggers, you're going to be getting them when you play that again just for your first land. So this is a really cool balance and definitely a cool commander. Based on all the green stuff we've been seeing that's actually being printed, I certainly don't think this is too powerful. 4/4 for 4 in 2 colors seems totally reasonable. And the effect you get is very powerful. But if it dies immediately, you're not getting that effect. And if it doesn't die immediately, you just get that incremental advantage every single turn. So this is a really cool one from Mariatho. Next up, we have Old Society by Buffalo Bill Chemo. Old Society is 2 white for an enchantment. Humans you control get +1/+1. Soldiers you control get +1/+0, and clerics you control get +0/+1. I think it's interesting. It's an anthem for supposedly a deck that is only going to have humans in it. Some of those might be soldiers, some of them might be clerics. Soldiers are probably going to be the ones you're going to want to attack with more. Clerics, I guess, defense more. It's a pretty interesting design, I would say, but I'm not sure if you can really get maximum value out of it, because unless you're using changelings, you're not going to have a soldier and a cleric, so they're not going to get like a +2/+2. +2/+1 or +1/+2 is still pretty decent. So I guess the bonus here is probably not you play a deck with soldiers and clerics, but rather you play a deck with only soldiers or only clerics. And that depends on whether you want to go more aggressive with a +2/+1 to all your human soldiers, or if you want to go +1/+2 to all your human clerics. So at first glance, this seems like you are conflicting on what you want here, but rather it's actually showing a versatility where you can play it in a human and soldiers deck or a human clerics deck. And I think that's pretty interesting. Though I'd have to actually build a deck with clerics that want +1/+2, since I think clerics are generally not as focused on combat. Obviously, blocking can be good in any circumstance, but I don't know if this is really worth a card in those decks. But +2/+1 for a whole bunch of soldiers can definitely be very powerful as a top-end card in an aggro deck. So, pretty cool. Coming in at number 3, we have another Planeswalker by Mari Stargaryen named Kier the Grand Trader for 4 black-red legendary Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. A static ability of at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 10 or more loyalty counters on Kier, you lose the game. Very interesting. +1, draw a card. Kier deals 2 damage to any target. Okay. +2, each opponent sacrifices 2 creatures. And +7, creatures you control get +6/+6 and indestructible until end of turn. Wow. What a turnaround for Planeswalkers. Totally different than we've seen before, and totally in flavor for Rakdos. You are actually gaining loyalty. I mean, this is almost like an exact opposite of Sarkhan the Mad, who was the first Planeswalker to only minus because, he was mad he couldn't gain loyalty. It's the totally opposite where it's getting only plus, but since you're losing the game if you have 10 or more loyalty counters on your upkeep, that is, this feels very in flavor for Rakdos. It is very expensive, but I mean, even just a +1 every turn you draw a card and shock something, very strong. +2, each opponent sacrifices 2 creatures. I don't know, that might even be too powerful. It is 6 mana, so if you're comparing it to Liliana Dreadhorde General, starts at 6 loyalty -4. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. The middle part is quite a bit better than that because it can be used twice. Well, actually 3 times before you even lose the game. And at some point, you just have to stop using Kier, which I guess is worse than Liliana. She draws you cards and makes creatures. He draws you cards, he doesn't make any creatures. So I think it's a fine comparison to Liliana. I think there are definitely some similarities. I would say that each opponent sacrifices 2 creatures might be a little bit too strong, even coming in at 6 mana for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker, but it does go up to 5. The thing is that I haven't even mentioned yet, he can lose loyalty from being attacked. So if they're actually trying to kill him, you're actually making it easier for him to use his abilities, which is such cool design for sure. But it does make each opponent sacrifices 2 creatures almost too good. So I don't really know how to change this. You could just make it each opponent sacrifices 1 creature, but that does feel a little bit weak. Could be to destroy a creature, but that doesn't feel quite as good or in flavor. You could make it, I can't believe I'm saying this, but as a downside, maybe you make it plus more. Maybe you make it like a +4 and you can only use it twice, but then you lose on the next turn. But then it's almost impossible to kill when it comes down. It's really hard to say, but I mean, this is definitely a cool card and one I would for sure try to play. Super cool card. Definitely haven't had a lot of bad to say about these cards because I feel like they've just been really solid designs all around. Okay, coming in at number 2 is the Natalia Duo by Ariatho. Very nice. 2 in the top 5. Ariatho certainly delivers. The Natalia Duo is 1 black and blue for a 2/3 legendary creature human rogue. Whenever an opponent discards 1 or more cards, investigate, and sacrifice 5 clues, you may cast target card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. Wow, this is pretty cool. So it rewards you for making your opponent discard cards. This, again, can be a really cool commander, as Ariatho is known to make commander cards. Obviously, it looks like you build around the discard, right? You make your opponents discard a lot of cards, you get to investigate, can draw you more cards, or you can use that to then cast the cards that they've discarded. You can sacrifice 5 clues, so that also doesn't have to come from its own ability. You can use other cards that make clues. I don't know how many other cards there are that make clues that are good enough to play in Commander in these colors, because you miss like a Tieless tracker and some of the other green ones. There are a lot of blue, just one-off spells that kind of cantrip with an investigate from Shadows over Innistrad. I don't really know how many of those are good, but I think it's definitely really cool. And Ariatho is kind of a legend, pun much intended, in the custommagic subreddit. He's actually been making a daily commander for the last 316 days, nearly a year, a new commander every time. And I've seen a lot of these in the past. They are always spicy. So definitely make sure to check them out. All right, drum roll, please. We are going to look at number 1 now. It is Guard Duty by Little Mr. Doom. Guard Duty costs 2 white for a sorcery. Put a defender counter on up to 3 target creatures. Simple. Sweet. I mean, this is like half a pacifism for 3 creatures. It's not an aura, so you can't destroy it very easily. It's very powerful. Removes 3 attackers, but they still can defend. It's by no means, a 3-for-1 because they still defend. They still have all their abilities. Defender, I mean, that's pretty relevant. I think that's pretty good. I will say one thing is there is already a card called Guard Duty. If that's not something you care about, not a problem. But, I know a lot of us like to make cards that have unique names so you can theorize about it being an actual card. And as far as cost for this one, I think 4 mana is probably right. You're technically down cards, right? You play this, they haven't lost any cards, and you spent a full spell. That said, it's a very powerful effect, in a way removing 3 of them from attacking. Probably just a powerhouse in a white control deck against mid-range or aggro. Beautiful card, and looking forward to more next week. That's all we have for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll be back next week to look at another top 5.